Well, hello, everybody. Dan Turbyville here, and this is Powerhouse Fence Show. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you being here. As always, the show is sponsored by Memphis Fence Company and Simpalo. We have a few partners. Well, wait a minute. First of all, what are we going to talk about this week? We're going to talk about getting into the world of bidding with general contractors. So kind of start from scratch, right? If you've never bid a job to a general contractor, we're going to talk about the things to do and what to expect and how to get into that process. But anyway, already said the sponsors. We have a few partners. The Thornton Fence Consulting. Uh, their link is in the description. Tony and his team. They do consulting. They host events periodically throughout the year. And you can check out their website if you'd like to look into that more. And Fence News is a fence industry publication. They put out the big, I don't know, the thing is the size of a newspaper, the big magazine. And I like them. So they're our partner here, EasyG Manufacturing. Another one, we use their stuff. It's good. We like them. And so we put their logo on the show. And with that, we will move on. I am live. Phone number's on the bottom of the screen, 901-878-4987. If anybody ever wants to call me, that's a number you can call. I used to talk about the things that I was listening to, and I haven't really done that a whole lot, really, because I haven't listened to anything that's that exciting. But I've still listened to the Founders podcast a lot. Normally, I listen to that show every week. The one that I'm listening to right now is about Elon Musk, and it's pretty interesting. So if you're looking to listen to a show about entrepreneurs, right? So I think that's kind of their thing is like history's greatest entrepreneurs. So it's a good show. You can learn a lot. You can hear a lot of things that other people did building very successful businesses, and sometimes we can apply those lessons to our own business. So again, Founders Podcast. And I've been listening to a new book, Dichotomy of Leadership. If you've ever heard of Extreme Ownership, this is the second book. And I've recently gotten into it. I didn't even know it existed until a few weeks ago. And I really enjoyed Extreme Ownership, so I decided I would give this one a shot. And so far, so good. But that's what I've been listening to. So thank you, as always. I appreciate you being here. And it's for you. I sit here every week and do this stuff for you. And I do appreciate the time that you spend to listen to me talk. And I really hope that it helps somebody out there. If you have any topics you want to hear about, any questions, anything like that, feel free to reach out anytime you want to. We still have the link for our we still have the link for Josh's family's GoFundMe in the description of the show. We also have the link for our Make-A-Wish fundraiser that we've been doing for a while in the show. So a little update on that. We granted one wish, right? Memphis Fence Company, we granted a wish ourselves. And a part of the deal was we wanted to do a wish celebration. And that's basically a party. So that's when the family or the kid, maybe, I'm not real sure, find out that their wish has been granted and they get to meet us and we get to hang out with them and bring them little gifts and stuff like that for their wish, whether that's a trip or whatever it is. So we'll get to do that, I believe. And it's taken a little while since we granted the wish for them to find somebody that was local that, could participate in a wish celebration and things like that. But it looks like it's heading in that direction now, which is cool. So that'll be a very interesting experience to go to this wish celebration and see all of this stuff being revealed and yeah, it's going to be interesting. And with that, I'll get into the topic of the show now. So, first thing first, let's cover a few basics. So, I want to talk about a few different types of work that we can do, right? So, residential is where most people seem to get started. Not everybody. In fact, Memphis Fence did not start by doing residential. They started by doing commercial work and later got into doing residential because some of the project managers and estimators and people like that would ask for a fence at their house, and there were no crews here to install it, and there wasn't anything in place to make that happen. And to be the go-to fence professional, they decided they wanted to fulfill all of that. So anytime the phone rang and they asked for a fence, my grandfather and his brother decided it was best that they be able to answer that call. And if you've been listening to the show, we don't do residential work, but if I get those phone calls, we will do it. And we will help people that help us, if that makes sense, right? So we don't tell them, no, sorry, we're not going to do it. But anyway, most people start in residential. It normally, from the perspective of the paperwork and the requirements and things like that, it's normally the easiest one. Now, you know, not in my experience, there were not many residential customers that were checking any kind of credentials at all. I mean, they weren't checking to make sure we had insurance, to make sure we were licensed, to make sure we had a business license. They didn't really check into that stuff. Even though like they knew our company and they had seen us around and things like that, they wouldn't ask. So there wasn't a lot of that type of stuff in that world. Every once in a while, somebody might ask for it, but for the most part, people weren't really worried about it. Uh, they would pay us deposits, right? So we'd tell them, hey, you want us to do a job for you? We're going to collect a 50% deposit up front. And that's how you get into the cycle of getting your job done. And the balance is due when we're complete. And that worked out most of the time. I mean, there were a few here and there that took their sweet, precious time paying and stuff like that. And some people wanted to argue about the deposit thing, but I mean, for the most part, it worked out. So residential can also be the hardest, right? Because it seems to be a little bit more difficult to keep some people happy when you're putting fence up at their house. Uh, Generally, they're spending their own money, which makes people care a little bit more across the board. I today was outside moving some trailers around, doing some stuff like that. And I looked at a trailer and the whole jack was ripped off the trailer. And I was like, you know, things just get beat up. I walked over to a building and saw, I don't know, some overhead doors that we put in 3 or 4 months ago. And one of them was all banged up. The walls of the building are all banged up. And, people, I don't know. I don't, accidents happen, things happen, but it just seems to mean a little bit more to you when it's your own money that you're spending, right? And that's the case a lot of times in the residential world. And so they watch you more and they expect more out of you. And so that can be difficult. Some people are laid back, some people are cool. They're like, "Hey, I just need a fence, put it up, let's go." But some people are super particular and want to fuss about everything. And you said you'd be there 8:30 and you got there at 8:25 and they get mad cuz you were early. You get there at 8:35, they get mad cuz you were late. And it's like, "Come on. Sorry." But anyway, nothing is always right. And I believe there's bell curves in a lot of this stuff. And so, there's extremes everywhere. So another thing that we do a lot of is like a business to business direct owner work, whatever you want to call it. I've heard people call it negotiated work. Maybe that's the right word for it. I don't use it. I say business to business. And what I mean by that is the car lot down the street calls and they want a fence put up around their lot. That's what I'm talking about, right? It's a small, locally owned car lot. It's not a big nationwide chain. And they're the ones who are on the site and they're the ones who are hiring us to do the work. So that's like business to business stuff that I'm talking about. But that can be easy, right? So in that scenario, when it's the car lot down the street, that's normally pretty easy. People don't get real crazy about a bunch of documentation and stuff, right? It kind of is similar to that residential world where they may never even ask you for certificate of insurance, business license, contractor's license, any of that stuff. They just want to know that their fence going to be installed, and they want to know that somebody's doing it is a professional and they're credible and they're going to stand behind their work and those things. So, but also kind of like residential, you can run into the scenarios where they're a little bit difficult, and they're difficult about the same things that we talked about with the residential customers. And again, nothing is always, there's bell curves. I mean, there's averages, right? Overall, it's a little bit easier world to work in with those locally owned smaller businesses. Now, when you get to dealing with the bigger ones, like your nationwide car dealerships, right? We use that as an example already. So let's say it's a car dealership that has dealerships all across the country, or across the southeast or something like that. Those will get a little more difficult, and you'll have a few more hoops to jump through. And I think in general, the larger the company that you're working for, the more requirements that they have, and the more difficult it's going to be to satisfy those requirements in order to either bid work or actually get a contract. And then with the bigger companies, when you do get a contract, it's going to be one of those 70, 80, 100-page long contracts that has all kinds of crazy stuff in it. So I think that seems to be a general rule of thumb, right? Is the bigger the company you're working for, the more difficult it is. And that applies both in the business to business, general contractor, like no matter where it is, that seems to apply. So some, even in the business to business world, there's a lot of them that make you jump through a lot of hoops. And again, these are normally nationwide. This is a lot of property maintenance companies or property management companies. And we're I got a phone call yesterday, and this gentleman told me that the job was approved. And I think we've been working, man, it has to be 6 or 8 or 12 months we've been working on this thing. And we went out, we quoted it, and then they say, okay, well, we need to get you set up in order to hire you. And they sent, I don't even know how many hundreds of pages for all these different policies you have to comply to, and just all kinds of stuff. Well, come to find out, this is like a property management company, but they work all around the world. And so they're big. And it just has been very difficult to get the ball rolling, to even get approved to be able to do work. And we have to have the approval before they can, hire us to do something. And so, like I said, it's this thing's been going on for months, but I did get a phone call that the job had been approved, but we've not received anything that's actually approved us to do the work. But it was a bunch of paperwork. It was a bunch of hoops we had to jump through. And that, maybe it needs to be a third category, right? Maybe the property management or property maintenance companies, like maybe they need their own category, because they can be a bit difficult. Some of them aren't so bad, some of them are so bad. So, anyway, maybe that's a different category, but there's a few basics, right? So, a lot of times in the business to business world, you just email them an invoice and they pay you and you move on. Some of them you got to chase, some of them you got to go through all of these systems to get, show that you did the job, and then you have another system that you got to bill it through, and it can be difficult. Just out, my advice in all of that would be to understand what you're getting into, right? So we have one page form. We have a one page form, and we call it like the new customer information form. And so when somebody wants to move forward with us, we send that to them, and it has questions on there, and it asks for references and stuff like that. But the main purpose of that form is to get the information from them for billing the job. We want to make sure when we submit a bill, we know how to do it, we know where it goes, we know how to get paid. Because you'll run into these scenarios where you send a bill to your point of contact that you've been talking to the entire time, and they see the bill and they go, okay, and they go on about their day. Well, they never pass that bill on to anyone else. And what happens is you look at your AR and you say, man, this thing's past due. And you call them up and they say, oh, did you turn it into the billing department or the AP department or whatever that is? And well, no, I didn't know I had to. And anyway, we've been in that scenario multiple times. And so we came up with this one page form and it's like, hey, our terms are net 30. Tell us how to bill you. And that's the information that we're trying to get out of it. So, again, my advice is to know what you're getting into. Understand how the process is going to work for billing them. Do you have to bill it through some third party service that's going to charge you a fee? Because it may cost you money if that's the case. Understand what the insurance requirements are going to be, all of that stuff when you start working for bigger companies in the B2B world. So the same as everybody else, general contractors, they also have a range of difficulties. And that can be again, I think it's tied to the size of the company, but the locally owned smaller general contractors seem to be pretty easy to work with. And they don't have near as many requirements as what the big ones do. Now, there are going to be requirements. When you work for a general contractor, I don't I can't think of a time whenever we worked for a GC and we did not have to give them a certificate of insurance and execute their contract and do those type of things. And then sometimes we don't have to fill out any kind of, special paperwork to bill, but that's the majority of the time. We have to fill out a schedule of values, we have to do their billing forms, we have to do all of that. So that's definitely the normal way it operates with a general contractor. Now, the more difficult they are, the bigger the contract gets, and then they'll have pre-qualifications and they'll have safety tests and orientations and drug testing and background checks and all of this other stuff you have to go through. Again, understand what you're getting into. The good big general contractors, I don't that's probably not fair. But what I like in them is when they disclose all of these requirements on the front end, and a lot of them do it. So when you go and you look at a job to bid, make sure you look through all of those other documents that are with it. Don't just go straight to the plans and straight to the specs. Look at all the other stuff and at least skim through it and see, is this something that I need to read? Right. But I would suggest opening every single file. All right. So sometimes the requirements might come from the owner of the property where the building is being built or whatever's happening. Sometimes they may have an architect who has some requirements and stuff like that. But again, I still think the larger the company, the harder they are, whether it's a general contractor, whether it's in this business to business world, whatever it is. So, why do we work for general contractors? Because as we just went through, residential is typically the easiest way. Business to business is a lot of times pretty similar to working in the residential world, right? There's not a ton of hoops to jump through and there's not a lot of requirements. Well, odds are if you want to do a two or three or 400 or larger, 200, 300, $400,000 job or bigger, it's probably going to be done with a general contractor. Not always. I say a lot. Nothing is always. But we've sold a lot more of those large jobs with general contractors than we have with anybody else. And you sell jobs to the same general contractors and you understand how they operate. The first job might be a little bumpy, but then you get to the second and the third and the fourth, and by now you understand how their system works. You know what you need to do on the front end. You know how to get the job done. You know how to bill them. You know how to get paid, right? You figure out that system. And if you have one GC that you could do, I mean, two or $300,000 or 500,000 or 10 million, whatever that number is a year over and over and over again, that's why you would go through the energy and the effort of getting hooked up with them and being able to do this work for them. I have to drink. So normally it just opens doors to opportunities that are different, right? If you say you do $1 million a year worth of work, well, you're doing $1 million a year worth of work. And if you get hooked up with a general contractor that's giving you 200,000 a year worth of work and you're still doing a million, like you're still doing the same thing, right? I guess it's just kind of you have more of a comfort in that recurring revenue instead of going out there and having to fight for it all the time. But ideally, if you got hooked up with a general contractor that was going to give you 200,000 a year, now your revenue goes from a million to 1.2, right? And you just figure out how to do extra work. So it's what's that saying? My daddy worked hard and all they ever did was give him more work. Sometimes it's like that. But a lot of times that's what we want, right? We want to do more and we want to work hard and we want to do more work. So there are benefits. And then, you get one job that's $200,000 and you get to go through the beginning of it and you understand what the job is and you learn the ins and outs of the job. And then you have that one project to manage for that $200,000 revenue instead of doing, a bunch of smaller jobs, right? And then you have to remember what's going on with 10 or 15 different jobs at a time. And you got to be able to have the information in your mind when someone asks you a question about the job and like focusing on one job. I enjoy that. I much rather focus on one big job that is 2 or 3 months long instead of going and focusing on a bunch of small jobs for that same 2 or 3 months. I prefer it. You might not, right? You might like being in the, I don't know, being in the mix of a bunch of different jobs or whatever that is. But for me, I like to do the one. I like to do the bigger jobs. And that's kind of what I enjoy. So we've made it through that. Now let's talk about actually getting into this world of bidding to general contractors. So first of all, the number one thing I have is someone just put a comment on LinkedIn. I'll let you read it with me. Hey there, I came across your campaign and I can see that you're putting in lots of effort. But are you sure your campaign is getting seen by people who truly understand your calls? Oh. Uh Looks like someone trying to sell some marketing services, maybe. All right. So again, insurance requirements. So general liability, workers' comp, umbrella, auto, you got to have endorsements when you work for general contractors, all this stuff. Um, so if you've never worked for a general contractor and you don't have this insurance in place, that's where I'm at right now in my conversation. Is you're not working for GCs, you've been doing residential, you want to get into the world. Well, this is one thing for you to think about is you've got to up your game in the insurance world. Probably, maybe not for sure, but probably. So check your state requirements, right? Make sure that everything is good to go there. And then you can talk to Chat GPT about it. I would be a little bit skeptical about that because a lot of this stuff is going to be dependent on the owner of the project or the general contractor or someone in that line is going to determine what insurance requirements they have. And I just wouldn't trust Chat GPT that much. You could call somebody in the fence world and you could ask them. That's going to vary a lot depending on who they're working for, where they are, all of those things. This would be my number one resource if I were getting into the general contractor world and I was worried about insurance, would be a real insurance professional that's local to me. I love that, right? I think that's a huge benefit. I think that's a great person to have on your team is a local insurance professional who writes commercial insurance regularly. So they can help get you pointed in the right direction. They're already working with other subcontractors in the area. They understand the insurance requirements that the GCs are putting out, and they know how to build you a package that's going to satisfy those requirements. Okay. Start off with what you need, no more, no less, but get what you need. And then if you do have a job that comes along that's a giant job that you got to have, but it has bigger insurance requirements, you can always add more later. So it's again, just start with what you need, right? Talk to your local insurance professional, talk to your insurance agent, get their opinions, get their recommendations. If you want to call someone in the fence world and ask them if it makes sense, then do that. But I would start with the insurance agent. Another thing is contractors licenses. So these are going to vary a lot state to state. There are minimum thresholds that you in some states. So like Tennessee has a minimum threshold. I think 50,000, maybe 25. I'm not positive, to be honest with you. But if the size of the job crosses that threshold, now you're supposed to have a contractor's license. And some states don't have a statewide license, and they might have certain municipalities or regions or districts or something like that that require a license to work there. And in that situation, you might have to get multiple to work in that whole state. I am vaguely familiar with one state that's set up like that, and I've looked at a few jobs there, but I've never really dove deep enough in to speak intelligently on it. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Some states you got to have multiple license, and they're controlled by local jurisdictions, right? Not by the state. And maybe they're easier to get. I don't know. And normally you've got to go take a few tests. So you're going to have to buy some books. You're going to have to submit an application. It's going to have to go with some financial information. And while you're doing, I mean, just go on the website, right? So for me in Tennessee, the Tennessee Board of Licensing Contractors or something like that, I can go on their website and I can read all about it and I can find out all the requirements and everything for a license here. That'll get you started in the right direction if you want to get one. They're going to have minimum equity, net worth, cash, some type of requirement that's going to make sure that you have X amount of either net worth, equity, or cash on hand in order to give you a license. And that may be tied to the monetary limit of your license, because some licenses will have a limit to the size of the project that you're allowed to do. But anyway, just go to the state's website and you can read about that. So wage rates, okay, like Davis Bacon, there's prevailing wages on jobs, there's all this stuff, and that's going to require that you turn in certified payroll. Uh, it- I wouldn't worry too much about that on the front end. I would just know it's a thing. And if you sell the job, you're going to have to figure out how to do certified payroll and turn it in every week. Maybe it's every pay period. So if you pay every other week, it might be every other week. But again, just know it's a thing and know to look for it when you're bidding a job. But along those lines, the reason I wanted to bring that up is because if you have 1099 subcontractors, I would bet, I'm not going to guarantee it, but I would bet that if you sell a job to a GC and you plan on using 1099 subcontractors when there are wage rates, they're going to hold your subcontractors to all the same requirements. A lot of times they ask you if you have subcontractors on there, and if they cross a threshold, then they have to submit insurance and all of this other stuff to the GC. Uh, but if there are wage rates, they're going to hold your subcontractors to the same thing, and they're getting certified payroll from somebody. I would just about bet. So just be careful of that situation, right? Is the reason I wanted to mention the certified payroll. Some of them have pre-qualification forms that you'll have to turn in. Again, this may be before you can even bid the job. It may be before they can award a job to you. It just kind of depends on the scenario. So a lot of times you'll have to give them a W-9. You'll have to give them your EMR, your mod rates. You might have to have a safety policy in place. Okay. You may have to actively be doing safety training. You may have to have a a drug-free policy in place. You may have to actively be doing drug testing. All of that again is going to depend on the general contractor, but just understand what you're getting into, right? That's the moral of all of this story, is to understand what you're getting into. Don't be scared of it. It's not anything absurd that you're going to have to do. It's going to be work and it's going to be something to figure out, but just know that some of these things exist. So if I were getting into it, I would make sure that I had the policies, right? So I would have a safety manual. I would have, I dare say, some sort of drug policy in place. And be prepared to present that to somebody when they ask for it. You're going to need to have financials in place if you're going to start doing pre-qualification stuff on bigger jobs with bigger contractors, because they're going to ask for it. So if someone asks you for financial year to date financials today, can you produce that? And if you cannot, then you might want to start working on that too, because somebody's going to ask you at some point. W-9s, those are easy. But I would also prepare some sort of statement to your capabilities, right? Maybe it's called a capability statement. I don't know. But I would prepare some sort of written statement that says, hey, we're capable of doing these jobs. Here's some examples. I'm hyper cautious about giving out names of projects or who we worked for, anything else like that. I would give a description of a project before I gave a specific name of the project. If they push, I might give it to them, but like I said, I'm just cautious about that. So I would say in 2025, we completed a project at a major distribution center, and the value of the project was, you know, XYZ, whatever that value was. And so I would give some example projects like that, and maybe even a brief scope of work. So maybe at this major distribution center, we did a job that was, 4,800 feet of 8 foot tall black vinyl coated chain link with 17 gates or whatever. Like I would put that in there, and I would have two or three of those example jobs that you have done. And then I would say, here's kind of the range of dollar value projects that we work on. And maybe you could list out some equipment you have or something like that if you wanted to, but just some sort of statement that kind of gives them an idea of the type of work that you're looking for and what it is you're capable of doing. All right. So all of that was kind of getting prepared to move on to the next step. And so now we're going to talk about where we actually find the work. Where is it? Well, one, there are bid boards that exist, right? And if you've looked into this world at all, you've probably ran across one of these. There's, I don't know, about 17,000 of them, I think. But like I Square Foot, Smart Bid, Building Connected, Construct Connect, stuff like that are kind of, they're more nationwide. We used to get, what was it, McGraw Hill Dodge or something like that. We used to get these books in the mail every week that had all the jobs listed out, and that was a subscription that we had. I doubt they do that anymore. I have no idea. It's probably all just on a website, if that company is still even called that anymore. But anyway, there's a bunch of them out there, but those are kind of like the nationwide ones are normally the expensive ones. So we use Construct Connect. I like Building Connected. I like their user interface. It's pretty nice. A lot of the times when we go on iSquareFoot or SmartBid or Plan Hub or any of these other ones, it's because some general contractor invited us to bid on a job, and it's on there with them. Typically, you get free access to go see their job, but you can't like go out and see the bid boards and see all the jobs listed and everything. And on Construct Connect, there are thousands of jobs on there. It gets a lot of stuff. And you can filter it down and get to what you're looking for, but there's a bajillion jobs there. So that's kind of going straight to like the big leagues, if you will, right? So, but you also pay for it. And I mean, you're going to pay some thousands a year to have access to those bid boards typically. I don't think I would start there. If I was just coming straight out of the gate, I don't think I would start with that. Another place you can get work is just through bid invites. Like I mentioned, we get the bid invites for these other plan rooms. And when we do, we get free access to it, right? So if you can get on the list with general contractors, then you'll start getting invitations to bid on projects. And eventually, you will get way more invitations than you can handle or more than what you want. So, this is a thing to think about, and it is eventually a thing to overcome because you're going to start getting invitations for a lot of jobs. I mean, we probably get 40 or 50 emails every day inviting us to bid on some job. Takes a lot of energy and effort for someone to sit down and look through all of them. And there are a lot of jobs out there that we could bid, and we prioritize. We have a certain system that we use to figure out, you know, we what jobs we want to bid, what jobs we don't want to bid, things like that. But I mean, we'll get invited to bid on a dumpster enclosure that's 12 hours away from us, and it just doesn't make sense to try to do it. And so when I say we get 40 or 50 a day, a lot of them are that. And there's duplicates in there and there's all this other stuff. But I know I looked the other day and it was maybe like 42 or 46 that we had gotten in one day. So there's a lot of jobs. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, one of our estimators was telling me that he's like, man, we're behind. We can't stay on top of all this stuff that we're trying to bid. We're no bidding jobs and all of this. We have 4 people that work in that department, and that's their world. They bid jobs to general contractors, and they can't keep up with the stuff that comes in. So, again, it will get to a point where it's too much, right? So just be again, not trying to scare you away. Just understand that it's there and it happens like that. So we bid local jobs first, and then from there we expand and we just find the other jobs that we want to bid, right? If it's a slow week locally, we might bid most jobs out of town. If there's a lot of stuff happening here locally this week, we might not bid any out of town or might only bid one or two. It all depends, but we focus here first because we want to take care of all of our local general contractors and we want to make sure that we're building those relationships with them. And that's how we do it. But past that, I have and I will happily bid fence jobs anywhere in the world. If it makes sense for us to bid it, I'll do it. I don't care. I'll figure out a way to make it happen. But it's got to be the right job and it has to make sense for us to do it. And you should too. Sorry, had to take a drink. Fence signs are great and they will get you phone calls, maybe, right? They're really easy, cheap, and really good advertising. So I have a fence sign right here that we put on temporary fence, and I have a fence sign right here that we put on normal fence. You can see they're the same thing, they're just 2 different sizes. Uh, Shout out to JC Gurry for making awesome fence signs. But they're great for advertising. If you're not using them, you should get some. And especially if you can get into the commercial world and your signs start showing up on fence around commercial properties, then that, to me, if I were a consumer, that would let me know that you work in that world. So definitely a good idea to have some fence signs. You can just stop by job sites. I mean, if there's some construction site that you drive by 3 times a day, stop in there. Right? Just go in and find a superintendent, find somebody sitting in the job site trailer and say, hey, I was in the area, just wanted to stop by and introduce myself and drop off some information. Give them a card. You don't have to give them some big, huge binder full of all kinds of stuff. Like, I don't want that. Do you want that? When somebody comes in to sell you something, do you want them to give you a whole big binder or do you just want them to give you a contact information and let them know, hey, I can install floors for you if you need, right? Like that's what we want mostly. Uh Local projects, so like your city, your county, your school boards, other government type of things like that, right? So they post jobs publicly and so you can monitor those websites. You just go poke around and you can find it. And you can monitor those websites and you can see jobs that are out for bid, but you're going to have to do some legwork there. So you're going to have to figure out what general contractors are bidding on the job because it's not probably not going to be listed on there. It's probably just going to tell you, here's the job, here's the bid date, here's the plans and specs and everything for the job, and that's it. So you might be able to call the architect and they might give you a plan holder list. I used to do that a lot way back when. we do it sometimes now, but it's not doesn't seem to be as common inside of our organization as what it used to be, but it's still a thing that you can do. So pick up the phone, call the architect, say, "Hey, I'm trying to bid this job. I need to know who's bidding it and see what happens." You might be able to call a project manager that is a representative of the city or the county or the school board or whatever that is, and ask them. They might be useful. They might give you, a sign-in sheet from a pre-bid meeting or something like that that you can get contact information off of. If you have one of the paid bid rooms, paid plan rooms, then you can go look there and you can see obviously if that job is listed there, then you'll be able to see general contractors and stuff like that who are listed. One thing, another good plan room is Builders Exchange. So we have a Builders Exchange in Memphis, but we also have there's a Builders Exchange that covers the state of Tennessee. They're relatively inexpensive and they don't have as many jobs, but they do a pretty good job of putting stuff on there. And so that might be a place to start. And you can probably spend a few $100 a year and get a membership there. And they should have a website you can go on and access all the plans and download them and stuff like that. So it's not like you have to go to the building and pull the plans off the rack and roll them out on the desk and all that stuff. Although last time I went to our local builders exchange, they still have that if you want it. And you're definitely not getting that from any of the big national, you know, bid boards and stuff like that. But anyway, local builders exchange is a good one to do. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about networking. So if you're trying to get in with general contractors, networking is great. I know that's it's such amazing information. You could send them an email, right? If you can somehow get your hands on email addresses, you can, which maybe comes from, getting a pre-bid sign-in sheet from an architect or from whoever the project manager is with that city job or whatever. But if you can get your hands on email addresses, then you can just send them an email. I would, again, I like to be concise. I don't like to put a ton of fluff in there and everything. You can put your capability statement that we talked about earlier in that email. So that way they know what you're capable of doing, right? But just ask them to be added to the bid list, their bidder list. And if you do that, they'll start adding you. You'll start getting invitations, and that doesn't cost you anything. You can send letters. I mean, a letter might stand out or it might just get thrown in the trash can, right? I mean, I don't know. I feel like 80% of the stuff I get in the mail just goes in the trash. Phone calls are great. You can just call, say, "Hey, can I talk to someone in the estimating department? I'm looking to get put on your bidder list." That's great. Just call them all. Right? It might not work with all of them. Some of them might just tell you to leave them alone. I don't know. But keep calling. You'll find some that'll put you on the list and you'll start getting invited to bid on their projects. But I would maybe somehow keep a record of who you called. And that way, 2 or 3 weeks or a month down the road, you haven't seen any invitations from them. Circle back to them. Same thing with the emails, right? If you send an email to somebody and you still haven't seen any invitation, circle back to them. Say, "Hey, just want to touch base and see if there's anything I can help you with." Uh, what I was going to mention earlier too, but I got distracted. Uh, I don't know how I get distracted, but I did. And one of the things that you got to figure out is how to know when you submit a proposal, how to know who to submit the proposal to, because you might submit it to 2 or 4 or 6 or 10 different people on the same job. And it's a pain in the butt if you have to go back through emails and notes and all of that stuff every time whenever you're looking for who's bidding a job. So start thinking about a system of how you can do that. Some kind of way where you can put all of the at least email addresses, names, emails for everyone bidding the job in one central place. And that helps you out a lot. All right, back to networking. There are some sort of association somewhere around you. Maybe a contractors association, maybe it's a chamber of commerce, like anywhere that people are gathering who may be your customer. Go in there and figure out how to get your money from them. Go in there, network with them, get to know them, and they're going to start asking you stuff. So we're looking to hire somebody right now, and I forget what the job title is, but some sort of like PR person. And that's not, I think it's called like a community outreach or, something along those lines. But we're basically looking to hire a PR person to go to everything. And so, I mean, all of the association events that happen, lunches, dinners, special events, golf outings, whatever that is, go to all of those. And I mean, I don't care if it's a ribbon cutting, I don't care if it's the Chamber of Commerce, whatever it is, go there. And then go out and try to take estimators out to lunch or project managers out to lunch or somebody that works at general contractors' offices, go take them to lunch. And I mean, I want Memphis Fence to pay for this person's lunch every single day because they're going out to lunch with somebody. But basically, just be out there networking and talking to people all the time. And we want to be the person that they think of when they think of Fence, right? And so I'm looking for a person. If you know anybody, let me know. There are philanthropic organizations and other community groups that do, volunteer work, nonprofit stuff, things like that. So those can help you build connections, right? Because a lot of times in the philanthropy world, those might be your customers and they might have some money that you could go get from them. So networking is a big deal. And there's a few little tidbits about networking and all of that, all of it takes time, right? So I guess I want to kind of recap here for just a second and just I've talked a lot and I want to hit on some of the high points of things that I've talked about, okay? So if you're getting into the world, have an insurance agent, ask them what insurance coverage you need, get that squared away. All right? Check to see check on your contractor's license for your state because it really sucks when you submit a bid and they come back and say, "Oh, what's your license number?" And you're like, well, because it's not, you can't go get a contractor license in a day, right? You can't just call them back tomorrow and be like, "Oh, here's my number." It's a little bit of a process, so check in on that. Um, we talked about the wage rates, the 1099 people, that's a thing to work through. If you do have 1099 folks and you want to play in the world, it might be a good time to put them on payroll and turn them into W-2 people. Be prepared to do pre-qualification stuff. Go ahead, work on your safety manual, right? Your safety policy manual, right? Just work on that kind of stuff and have it in place because you're going to get asked for it. The capability statement, do it right, right? Balance it. Don't go too far, but don't sell yourself short. So don't go in there and the biggest job you've ever done is $18,000 and tell them you can do a $4 million job, right? Be realistic and understand what you can do. Look for jobs. Again, I would start, if I were to do this from scratch, I would start by just picking up the phone and calling and saying, "Hey, I want to be added to your bidder list." And that's where I would start. You can send letters, you can send emails, you can do stuff like that if you can get your hands on some contact information. In fact, in that phone call, you might ask for contact information for someone in the estimating department and just kind of follow up with them if you haven't seen anything. But I would start there, and I would also look at the builders exchange. If it's a city, a state, whatever it is near you, I'd try to probably start there just because it's generally a little bit cheaper, right? And you can start a little smaller and get your feet wet and kind of get a rhythm for bidding jobs and things like that, and then graduate up to the big ones. But hey, maybe you want to go out and you want to spend several $1,000s a year on one, then go straight to a big one. That's cool too. What you're going to find out is you need more than one because jobs aren't always everywhere, and you're going to want to bid some job, and it's going to be listed somewhere that you don't have. So, yeah, just again, I would start with the builders exchange, and I would get invited to jobs. I probably wouldn't worry about monitoring the city, county, school board, all of that stuff, websites. I mean, if you got free time, it doesn't hurt to go check it, but that would not be a priority for me. I would try to find at least one group that you could go to that has monthly meetings and just kind of go in there and start meeting some people. I think that's solid. And then the further you go, you can do more if you want. If you see a return, if you see that it's working, then you can start doing some more. All right. So that's kind of a recap of what we've covered so far. Next, expect to lose jobs, right? You're not going to go in and start bidding jobs and you're not going to win 50% of them, or you're not going to win 80% of them. You're not going to win all of them. In fact, if you do sell all the jobs that you're bidding, you're doing something wrong. You're bidding too cheap. So you can't expect to sell them all. Don't go bid 3 jobs and not sell any of them and get all bummed out and not try it again. If you're going to do it, just start bidding jobs and eventually you're going to figure out what you got to do. And follow-ups are a big deal. So when you bid a job, call and ask them. And I don't mean immediately, right? Give it a few days, but call and ask them and say, "Hey, I submitted a proposal on, you know, the Central Park project. How do our numbers look on there?" And see what you can get. And again, we talked about this, right? Keep a record of the people that you submitted a proposal to. And so now you can call multiple people and ask them about the same job. One that really frustrates me is you call somebody and they're like, "Oh yeah, Jim's contracting service won that job." And you look and you didn't bid it to Jim's contracting service because you never heard of them, you didn't know they existed, and you didn't have them on your list of folks to send a bid to. That's aggravating, but it happens, right? So now what I would do is I would call Jim's contracting service and I would say, "Hey, I heard you're the low bidder on this job. We bid it. We didn't know you were bidding. I'm happy to send you an invitation or a proposal on this job if you want, but I would like to be on your bidder list moving forward." Right? So that's the point of the phone call. You want to be on that bidder list moving forward. But yeah, that's aggravating when it happens. But every once in a blue moon it works out. We're in a situation right now where maybe it'll work out. We found out somebody was low on a job. We didn't submit a bid to him. One of our estimators, Mr. Perry, reached out to him, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I was low on that one, but here I got 4 more I want you to look at too." Right? And so he sent several jobs that he had bid and asked us to take a look at them. I don't know how I feel about like the ethics of that behind the scenes, right? Because he put somebody's number in there when he bid it. So, yeah, kind of have mixed feelings about it, but here we are. All right. So be consistent, right? If you bid a job once a year, you're probably not going to get a phone call and say, "Hey, I want to make sure you saw this job that's coming up." You got to be consistent, right? If you're bidding jobs and then they start hiring you, they like your numbers, you're doing good, whatever that is, they'll start calling and making sure that you're going to bid some job that they invited you to bid. I think it's important to respond when you get a bid invitation. Look at the job. If you're going to bid it, say, "Yes, I'm going to bid it." If you don't want to bid it, say, "No, you're not going to bid it." Let them know your intentions and then do that. If you say you're going to bid it, I think it's very important that you do bid it. Things happen. I mean, we can't be perfect. None of us are. But if you commit to do a thing, I think it's important to do the thing. So be consistent. Uh, Start working on the jobs early so that you can ask questions. I like asking questions. I think it shows that we're putting time and effort and we get to display our professionalism and all of these things. So I like asking questions, but you don't want to ask questions last minute. You want to get out ahead of it and you want to be asking questions in advance. Um, so I like to ask the questions, right? But I don't want to you're gonna get frustrated by that too. Oh my goodness. Because you might spend an hour and a half preparing this big, fantastic email that's got all these questions and you reference every detail number and sheet number and all of this stuff. And they respond to you and they say, "Yeah, right." It's like, "Oh, well, that didn't really help me at all." Or they answer one of your 12 questions or whatever, but it happens, right? Just deal with it. That's the way that the world works. But I do think, again, it show some level of professionalism and detail orientation and like it, or being detail oriented. I don't know if that works the other way, but it shows that we want the job and that's just how we roll. So, but again, you got to do it early enough, right? So, quick turnaround budgets happen. And this is a subjective thing, and this is going to be up to you how you handle it. If someone calls me and they say, "Hey, man, I need a last minute budget number for this job. It's 400 feet, a 6 foot tall chain link," and I mean, I can ask a few questions, I can find out some details, and I can kind of give them a guesstimated idea of what that should be. Now, if they call me and they say it's 4,000 feet of some 12-foot tall, high security anti climb with dig barriers and all of this other stuff, I might not know the answer to what that job should be off the top of my head. And so I personally am pretty transparent with them. And I'm like, hey, this is going to take me some work. I don't know the answer, right? If you can send me all the stuff, I'm happy to bid the job. But again, it's up to you, right? If you want to however you want to handle that. But it happens. They call you, they ask for budgetary numbers or a quick price on something. That they ask for stuff like that. Uh, I like to be helpful when a general contractor calls and wants help. I like to do whatever we can do to make that happen for them because I think either A, it's a great way to continue a relationship, or B, it's a great opportunity to get our foot in the door and help them out. uh, those are the times when it's like that's your moment to shine, right? Is when they pick up the phone and they call and say, "Hey, here's my situation. Can you help me?" And I think it goes a long way when you are able to help them. And again, especially if it's a new contact, right? That's a great opportunity. But if it's a long-standing relationship, I think those are just as important or maybe even more important, right? I don't want them calling somebody else. I wanna be the one that takes care of them, and I want them to know they can pick up the phone and call me, and I'm gonna take care of them. So, when I get those phone calls, someone asking for help, they're in a bind, they need us to do something for them, I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to make that happen. Because over time, I want to be the go-to fence professional, right? That's what a lot of the stuff that I've talked about here. I just did my arm because I have the show notes in front of me. But a lot of the stuff that I've talked about in these notes right here in this show is all about becoming the go-to professional, right? So you have to leave a positive impression and you've got to do what they need you to do and you got to help them out and you can become that go-to person for them. And that's a big deal. So when you submit a proposal, this is important in my opinion, and I'm a stickler about it in our own business, um, because I think it's important. But I like to give them something simple, the same as your what was it, capability statement or whatever word I used. I think that should be something simple. I think your proposal should be something simple. I don't want to give them a 10-page long proposal. I think that is way too much. I don't wanna give them a bunch of fluff in there, right? I give them what they're looking for. I wanna give them the name of the project, the scope of work, the price, exclusions, and inclusions, and that's pretty much what I wanna put on there. Now, if you feel like you need to put a bunch of fluff, put it behind that, right? Page 1 has the name of the job, the date, the scope of work, the price, exclusions, inclusions, who submitted it. That's page 1. And then if you wanna put a bunch of fluffy stuff in there, put it behind. Because I think about these general contractors and it's bid day, okay? And they're bidding a job and they've got 30 different scopes of work on there and every one of them they're going to get 5 proposals on. So now they have 150 proposals to sift through and make sure all everything is covered and make sure there's not stuff that's overlapping and do the best they can handling all of that. They don't want 10-page long proposals to have to go through for every one of those people. They want to know easily and quickly what's on it. And another thing that I'm a stickler about is everyone that submits a proposal from our office, they all look the same, right? I want I want contractors to understand how to look at our proposal and how to read it, and I want them to know what to expect from us. So I like them to all look the same. I like them to all be just enough information. Scope of work, I'll put specs in there, just a brief description of what we bid. You can put where you found the fence. So if it's, whatever sheet number you found it on and stuff like that, you can put all that in there. And my wife is calling me. Sorry. You can put all that stuff in there and just give them an idea of what you found, right? So if you found 1,800 feet of fence and they see that you found it on sheet, A101, whatever, and they only found 1,400, but they were looking in the civil plans. Well, maybe they can now see what page you saw it on and they maybe agree with you. So I think it's good to give them a little bit of information like that, right? And maybe if I put my fence complies to spec section, da 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 da. But anyway, keep it brief, keep it simple. So again, I don't like sloppy bids. I don't like incomplete bids. So I like to submit a complete scope of work and I like to tell them the scope. So I don't want to say, oh, well, I bid the 6 foot fence and I bid the 4 foot fence, but I didn't bid the 10 foot fence. Like, well, why not? They're probably not going to hire you if you do that. But I like it to be complete. I like to tell them the scope and tell them where we found the fence. Just be clear, be complete, and then follow up. Okay, we're almost done. Follow up. So I like to I kind of think it like shows them that we want the job, if that makes sense, and shows them that we want to work with them. Maybe there's some of that going on, right? But again, I wait a few days, I follow up and say, "Hey, how did we look on this job?" Sometimes they give you information, sometimes they don't. But it's cool when they do because then you can start kind of seeing the trends, right? Am I consistently 5% higher? Am I consistently 40% higher? Am I consistently 40% lower? Right. I think it's important to kind of have an idea how you're doing versus whoever else is bidding on the jobs. So follow ups do that for you too. And again, don't expect to go in and win every job that you bid, right? You're going to start bidding the jobs and you're going to realize that you're getting beat, and that's okay. That's a part of it. But do the follow up so that way you can try to learn from it. And then if you've ever listened to the show, you understand your company's financials and you understand your overhead and you understand what your margins need to be. And you can look at how you're getting beat and say, okay, what's beating us, right? Can I go in with a lower margin, or is that already as low as you can go? And if it's as low as you can go, then you can't go any lower, I guess. I'm sorry, I spent a lot of time outside today and I cleaned out this super dusty shed. And so now I'm dealing with the effects of breathing dust for a couple hours. But yeah, follow up with them. I don't want to sound like I'm desperate when I'm following up, right? I don't want to like beg for work or anything. I just want to show them that I'm a professional, I'm serious about it, and I want to do the job. And don't disappear when they need you. So no matter where this is in the process, whether this is when they're trying to get a budget, when they're bidding a job, when they're at the they're at the end of a project that they've been working on and realize that they forgot something had to be done and they call you. Ah, man, there's so many scenarios where they might call you and they need you, right? Again, be the person that can help them out when they need you, or at least try your best. It doesn't always work, but try your best, try to help them out, and that will pay dividends for you in the future. And that's what I have. So, thank you everyone who listens to this show. I appreciate you being here. And if you want me to talk about something, if you have any ideas, let me know. I will see you next time.